Thank you all for coming, and I'm introducing Patricia
Oh, now, wait a minute. You do not speak until everybody is listening.
Oh, okay. I think that might be a while. Okay, thank you all for coming. I'm introducing Patricia Lammersfeld. She was born and raised on the northwest side of Chicago. She soloed in a Piper Cub at age 18. She was an airline hostess with Braniff Airways at age 19. At age 20, she married and raised 4 children, one which was adopted. She finished her teaching degree at age 27. She was a substitute teacher in the middle school in Parkridge, Illinois. She retired and moved to Marco Island, Florida, where she lives now. She is fond of saying it's not where you are, it's who you're with. She joined the Civil Air Patrol as a radio operator. She was an observer on the right seat and then a cadet commander in the Civil Air Patrol. She was happily married for 59 years and widowed for the past 5 years. And she has a motto of always looking up. So please welcome her.
Before my husband died, he gave me strict instructions. He said, now when I go, you're not to mourn, because I know where I'm going and I can hardly wait to get there. So I keep that in mind. I loved being in the junior high, the middle school today. The kids are well behaved, they're bright, and they asked good questions, gave good answers, and I had, what I'm trying to say is I'm exhausted. 5 classes. I'm 85 years old. Don't write that down.
Please, genealogy.
My mother always said to me, you had a very famous grandfather, and you're just like him. What? Oh, what? How am I like my grandfather? Well, he was quiet, and everybody liked him. So, I don't know. I think I'm quiet, and everyone seems to like me. But I was always looking up. And were you of the age like I, that when you saw an airplane up there, oh, you looked. My mother said when she was a child, when she saw an airplane, she waved. Anyway, when I was in about 8 years old in the school library, I found the book. Anybody ever read this book? Yeah, look. I come across people all the time that say, oh yeah. There weren't that many books in those days. So I found the book and I took it out and I said to the librarian, that's my grandfather, and she said, no, it's not, that's a famous airline pilot.
Thanks so much.
I checked it out, my mother wrote a note that yes, that is her grandfather. So, backing up a little bit, Jack was born in 1892. Where were you in 1892? Things were different. There were no automobiles. The bicycles had the big wheel. Airplanes, of course, had not been invented. However, it wasn't just the Wright brothers. They were demonstrating. They were figuring out gliding in Europe also. The Wrights, they thought they had, and I just finished, Miss Librarian, I just finished the book, The Wright Brothers.
Oh,
Good book? I'll
Good
see if
book.
we have it. It's
Good
just
book.
called The Wright Brothers?
The Wright Brothers.
Okay, I'll see if I can close it.
Oh, is it?
Was it? Maybe.
looking at
More than you need to know about the Wright brothers, but I learned a lot from it, naturally. I'm still learning, and I've learned a lot on this trip. It's been good. So, James Herbert Brockett was born in Kansas, and his mother, Mabel Smith, Brockett, died when he was almost 2. The dad brought the body back to Buchanan with the 2 little kids, little baby James and his 4-year-old sister Lucille, where he and the sister were adopted by Emma and Dr. Mel Smith. How did that work? Was that the thing you did when you, I don't know, did he write to them and say, will you adopt my children? Did they have telephones in 1894? I don't know how that worked, but I think it was a happy childhood. And all I know about his childhood is this, and can you really trust everything you read in a child's novel? It tells me that he liked to climb trees. Really? And he liked to call, but I've got an expert here who was there and checked it out. And he found a tall tree over by the old Brockett house. So I guess that's what boys did in those days. Do girls still climb trees?
Only if they like.
Would you stand please and introduce yourself? This is one of the outstanding students from your middle school. She doesn't want to stand and introduce herself.
She's a 7th grader,
Ah,
going into 8th grade next year.
there's the book. How about that? She found it, it was at her fingertips. Good book. Okay, so he had a good childhood, he was brave, he was, so the book says this, you didn't know you were gonna get a child's book report. Playing ball, he's hitting the head with a baseball, but he was brave. And he, so the big guys let him play. So I told my dad I wanted to play baseball, and he went out immediately and bought a Louisville Slugger baseball bat. I was never any good. So James had a happy childhood, and boy, I'd like to see his report card. I would like to see pictures of him growing up. There's a great display over here of what we do have on him. And you know what? I don't think he was that great. I think, don't quote me, but I think he was just a hard-working man that was in the right place at the right time and did the right thing. Did the right thing. Well, he went to college. It was Michigan, it is now Michigan State University, an engineering program. So he must have had a little smarts up here, but he left after 3 years. Was he kicked out? Did he get tired of school? We don't know, but he had a job in Chicago. And then, what do we know about the Chicago years? He went roller skating. What? How can you go roller skating in 1914? Well, thanks to the internet, I looked it up. Roller rink, Chicago. Yes, there was a roller rink right on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, and that's where, drum roll, he met, what do you want to be when you grow up?
A drummer.
I knew that. He met my grandmother, Esther Pearl Sullivan. He fell in love and had a baby girl, not necessarily in that order, but he did marry her. I have the birth certificate. And then what? I don't know, did he continue roller skating? I don't know. But he did, meanwhile, do you mind if I treat you like the junior high? That's the way it is, yeah, okay. There's a junior high, pretend you're 12 years old. Does anybody know the year that World War I, see, that's my school teacher voice. Does anyone know the year that World War I started? Approximately? 1914. 1914. Give this lady a gold star. or a red ticket. Is that what you get at school? Red tickets, yeah. 1914, we didn't get in right away. Hey, that's their war, forget it. Germany was against who? How soon we forget. Who was Germany the aggressor against?
France for one.
The France and England, yes. There were others, look it up in your spare time, who was against who? Germany, and it was trench warfare. Tough. And the Germans had aircraft. Really? The Germans had aircraft, and I've got, okay. Germany had 46 airplanes and 52 pilots. England had 29 airplanes and 88 pilots. France had 260 aircraft and 171 pilots, and France sent us a message, please send airplanes, please send pilots. We didn't have, I think our Army had 4 aircraft at that time. So, we were not interested until, what happened? Why did we get in the war? The sinking of
Lusitania.
They knew, your class didn't know, they knew. The sinking, how many people drowned? 100 people drowned. Now we're mad, we're gonna get into this and we're gonna end it. And so, they recruited 10,000 young American men to learn to fly. Oh, boy, Jack jumped at that. And he was stationed in Kelly Air Force Base, not Kelly Air Force Base, Kelly Field in Houston. He took to the flying, and the men could hardly wait to get over and win, end the war, fly, come against the Red Baron. Yes, the American spirit. Well, they didn't choose Jack to go. He was too good. They kept him back as an instructor. He was disappointed. Probably saved his life, because many of them were killed. The aircraft they were a bunch of beginners. Well, maybe the Red Baron was skillful, but those were the days of aviation, weren't they? Oh, boy. So the war was shortly after. So what are they gonna do with all these aircraft? Does anybody know the name of the aircraft that we sent over there? I'll give you a hint. Jeffrey de Havilland designed them. They were de Havillands. The DH-4, famous aircraft. Big on posters during the enthusiasm. Same way with World War II. Yes. Anybody here old enough to remember World War II and how patriotic we were? Contribute your aluminum pans for the war effort and that sort of thing. So Jack now is sent home, as they all were, and we've got a lot of men with flying experience. The government has the DH-4s. Did I tell you that they disassembled them, put them back on boats, and then reassembled them here? So what are we gonna do with them? The post office spoke up. We'll take some of those planes. We'll hire some of those Army guys to fly them, and we will show you that we can beat the railroad that carried the mail. Well, there were a lot of deaths. And they were cracking up the planes beyond repair. And a lot of the pilots died in these crashes. And so the government said, we're not giving you any more money. Forget it, we're gonna close down the post office airmail. Meanwhile, back in Europe, their government was subsidizing aircraft manufacturers and aircraft companies. So the predecessors of and I don't remember all the names, but there were a lot of predecessors of BOAC, British Overseas Airlines, Air France, I don't know, Alitalia. They were really ahead of us in aviation. We also had a bunch of little not airlines, but companies that formed just to carry the mail. Standard was one of them. Jack went with Standard, and he was flying the mail with Standard, which eventually became United Airlines. You know, he was at Ellington Field in Houston. My grandson, Elliot, was in a Civil Air Patrol unit. Same thing in Houston, there near Ellington Field, Kelly Field. Elliot, your great-grandfather actually learned how to fly here. Oh yeah, Grandma, so what? He didn't care. However, Elliot, Civil Air Patrol is having a glider camp where you can learn to fly a glider. Oh, Elliot was interested in that. So I went along as a helper, sat in the hot sun, timing them up in the air. And Elliot had flight instruction in a glider for a week. I didn't tell them that that was my grandson. I didn't want any special, I didn't want him to be pointed out. But when we left, and I told the instructor that I was the grandma, I was told that he was the best one. Well, I was the timer. I could see who was staying in the air and landed on the spot. What a thing for a teenager to be able to do with his grandma. And I tried to tell the kids, I didn't tell them that story, but when you get into any organization, if you really get into it and get all the badges as a Boy Scout or really study your music lessons, there's a lot of interesting stuff that comes your way. So for Elliot, it was learning to fly a glider. Elliot now works for Boeing. Elliot, what do you do? I know he's a programmer. He looks at me like, Elliot, can you tell me? I know you have a high-level clearance, but can you tell me what you're doing? He shakes his head, no. But it has something to do with anti-aircraft income, outcome, but, so, not to be outdone by my grandson, I got a book on how to program in the children's section. I got past the first page, couldn't do it, could not do it. But the engineers of today, you paying attention? The engineers of today are all computer engineers. It's all about programming. It's, I don't like it. I like the good old days. I like the old days. Oh, yes. Oh, did I tell you? Yeah, we'll get to that. All right. So, the airmail, they've cut the funding. We've got to prove to Congress, that we can beat the train. 2 planes are going to start from California, San Francisco actually, 2 from New York. I see a lot of people nodding their heads. They're either falling asleep or they say, yeah, I heard about that. Okay, they were going to go cross-country and beat the train. And wouldn't it be nice to do it on a nice, significant day? Let's do it on Washington's birthday. The junior high, what do we call it? Not junior high, it's the middle school. They didn't know when Washington's birthday was. But now they do. I don't know, it's that important, but it's February 22nd. There was no moon that night. Bad choice, and it was snowing. bad choice. The two pilots that were flying, two planes, from the East Coast, well, they got as far as Pennsylvania, changed pilots, got as far as Chicago, and they scrubbed it. No, too much snow, can't do it, sorry, another day. The two pilots from San Francisco, the one crashed near Las Vegas, died, and the other one got as far as, why does my mind go blank? Does your mind ever go blank? Slow down. Nebraska, not Omaha, North Platte. Got your attention, didn't I? Got as far as North Platte. Now Jack had already flown his route for the day. He flew from Cheyenne, Wyoming. I love the way that sounds. I'm gonna say it again. Cheyenne, Wyoming to North Platte. He was tired. He had a broken nose. He had crashed and knocked unconscious the week before. But there he was, ready to call it a day. And they said, "Oh, Jack, you are gonna take it across the state of Nebraska." Now it's midnight. It's dark. It's cold. He's tired. He's got a broken nose, but it's his turn. Happily, he had something to follow. What was it?
Railroad.
What?
The railroad.
Can't hear you.
The railroad. Railroad track.
Railroad, she said.
Why can I not hear you? Come on up here. I love middle school. This is good. You know, you want to be an entertainer. This girl's going to be a famous drummer someday. And she's got to be in front of a crowd to drum.
Oh, boy.
Okay, all right, I'm not going to embarrass you anymore. There he is, and he's going to do his best to get from North Platte to Omaha. And there's going to be some bonfires lit. And it's going to be a long day, but little did he know. He said he blessed, these are his words, he blessed the farmers that stayed up that night and lit bonfires all along the track for him to follow. How nice. In those days, the airmail pilots were like the astronauts of the 60s, like, wow, heroes. They're just mailmen that happen to know how to fly and had a job. They got paid 3 times as much as a mailman for the hard job, but they were just hard-working men that did a job. So he was grateful for the farmers that had lit the bonfires. He got to Omaha, 2,000 people were there. They had bonfires there to help him land. And he is ready to hit the sack, and they tell him that his replacement pilot didn't make it, so the whole thing was scrubbed. And he famously said,
Let's fly.
"Let's fly," or something like that. I don't know exactly what he said. Every time I read, it's a different. He said, "I'll take the mail through." And they said, "Oh, Jack, the weather's bad. You're tired. You don't have to." But he insisted, even though he had never flown that route from Omaha to Chicago. He said, how hard could it be to find Chicago? You just look for Lake Michigan and Chicago's gotta be there someplace. Does that suggest that he might have a tinge of humor in his, yeah, I think so. Later he did quite a bit of public speaking for United. And I think he enjoyed that. And here's something I didn't tell the junior high people. I was telling this story. the abbreviated version to a neighbor some years ago, and the guy got all excited. As I was saying, my grandfather was an airmail pilot. He said, "What's his name, Jack Knight? What's his name, Jack Knight?" He said, "I heard him speak. It was a church youth group at my church. And he was telling us all about flying and how safe flying was." That tickled me, that this man remembered a speaker that he had had in middle school. Okay, so Jack is going to fly from Omaha to Chicago, and he'd never been over the route, and he had to stop for gas at Iowa City, and he couldn't find the airport. Dark night. So he's circling, happily, providentially. Do you like that word, providentially? I do. It's a theological term, look it up. The night watchman lit a flare. He saw the runway, landed. The night watchman helped him refuel, and then the night watchman spun the propeller. And I told the middle school that if they ever, are you paying attention? Ever help an airmail pilot by spinning the propeller on a Jenny or a DC 4, 3, 2, any one of them, be very careful, because at least 2 helpers lost their lives by not jumping away from the propeller fast enough and got clunked in the head with the propeller. I don't usually I don't like to brag, but when I took flying lessons, it was a Kuiper Cub, and I had to learn how to start the engine too that way. And I was very careful. I did not get hit in the head with the propeller. Okay. You know, we've got a future drummer here. You can get really hurt with drumsticks, right? Right, Dad? Dad's a drummer too. Okay.
Really?
Well, so he's fueled up. He finds Lake Michigan, even though it's snowing. And again, Jack's words. And I called attention to the middle school. I think it's good writing, because it sounds like a man that's cold. I was fairly dead for lack of sleep. I was constantly on the verge of dozing. I gripped the control stick with my knees and began slapping my hands together. I stuck my head over the side of the cowling, and I had to explain to them what cowling was, and the rushing wind bit into my cheeks. Fog and snow obscured the ground. I seemed to be roaring through a white-black space, absolutely alone in the universe. Here was the danger that I needed to restore my wakefulness. My drowsiness passed. I dare not be tired. I like that. Guy was cold, scared. Well, he found Chicago, he found Checkerboard Field, and there was a large crowd waiting to cheer him. They had heard about it on the radio while they were out dancing. There were a lot of them in evening clothes, and they had to lift him out of the cockpit. He was so cold. Well, I made the newspaper headlines the next morning. He became a national hero, saved the mail. Bill Hobson was there to carry the mail on to Pennsylvania, while another pilot carried it on. The mail was saved. Congress then passed the money, and the post office flew the mail for another couple of years. And then they quit the new administration. No more money. And the small airlines, the small companies started They had to be certified. They started flying the mail. And Jack got a job with, escapes me, Standard, I think, which later became United. He was the first pilot in the United States to log 1 million miles. I should make a math problem out of that. At 100 miles an hour. I don't know, I gotta think about that. How long did it take him to do 1 million miles? And then he became their director of education. Well, that was a good job. He got to go all over the country speaking about how safe aviation was. Why? So that people would fly. People were a little reticent to fly in the old days. And then World War II broke out. He was too old to serve, but United sent him down to South America to purchase rubber. And I guess the landing strips down in South America are not what they were here. And he made 16 trips down there in all, bringing back rubber. That sounds so primitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he developed, was it tuberculosis? And he was ill. So he went home to, I'll say it again, he went home to, I can't hear you.
Buchanan.
He went home to Buchanan, and he died the next day. And he was young, I forgot how young, but he was young, 50-something.
Was his folks in that house yet, do you know, or?
No, they died long ago.
Okay. Well, you know that the place on South Redbud we talked about where you live?
I have no idea. Okay, I'll tell you how I got interested, other than my mother telling me I was just like him. I went on to be a flight attendant. Don't tell anybody, but they used to let me fly. In those days, the flight attendants could, here's your coffee, sir, can I fly? And then my beautiful daughter didn't want to be a school teacher, so she got a job with American. Why am I telling you this? I forgot. There was a point to this. Okay, put that aside. She took flying lessons as a teenager too. We never really did anything, but there seemed to be a bent toward the air. I went to Oshkosh once. Any of you pilots know what Oshkosh is? It's the world's largest air meet. My grandsons I tried to encourage by being members of the Civil Air Patrol, and also the one actually went to, right out of high school, went into the Air Force and learned the skill of an electrician at the Air Force. He's now a police officer in Chattanooga. Oh, this is why I was going to tell you. Grace, my children are smarter and better looking than I am, which they really are. Aren't yours? Grace, she is the kind of a flight attendant that, well, she recently retired after 32 years, would you believe it? And she looks like that. She was passing her coffee, being gracious hostess, and she overheard somebody say that they were an aviation historian. So she went back after she put her coffee and said, "Did you ever hear Jack Knight?" And the woman screamed. "Would you scream for us? Come on." Trying to involve them. The woman said, "Did you, Grace, ever hear of Jack Knight?" The woman said, screamed, "Yeah, we've been looking for you." There was a newspaper editor in Sacramento, California that had written a play. He had hired professional actors. They were going to present it in his backyard amphitheater, and they wanted some of the family to be there. Well, Grace had 2 little kids at home, she didn't wanna go to any old play about her great-grandfather, so I went. And part of this, he put a big screen and flashed a full-size de Havilland picture on the screen. And I thought, I could do that. So then I started researching. This is the siege of Paris. So they're silk balloons, and they sent messages and carrier pigeons. And the history of aviation is fabulous. There's so much to it. So then I developed a program, not this one, it's a little bit different. And I thought, I want to show my program to the Jack Knight Airmail Society. And so I offered my services, and confidence is a good thing to have. Overconfidence is ugly. So I was confident that the Jack Knight Airmail Society, there was a stamp collecting club, would like to see my program about his famous flight. And they were having it at a dinner at the 94th Aero Squadron restaurant. Perfect. My husband and I got a nice dinner, but it was soon evident that everybody there knew more about airmail than I did. But being a substitute teacher, you learn to change horses while you're riding. And I made it a quiz, and I learned a lot from those people of some of the names and some of the little stories about the airmail pilots. So my question to you is, who are our heroes today? They're not the airmail pilots. They're not, I don't know. We need some heroes. And I'm looking to the next generation, the farmers especially, the drummers, all those kids in middle school, to be the heroes and do something about this country. And all he did was do the right thing at the right time. Nothing outstanding, did the right thing. And to follow your heart. If you want to be a drummer, great, but have a plan B. Okay, good. Any questions? Good. What did I not tell you that I should have told you?
I guess I was gonna ask you, so he brought it up, I guess. Which, do you know which house it was near the railroad tracks there? And was that his grandparents lived there, or who lived there?
His adopted parents, and we do have a picture of the house.
Okay.
Peter?
It's on Howe Lane.
That's where
I
Bob
think.
Ferris used to live, just across the railroad tracks.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
at Bob Ferris's house?
That's right, that's where,
Oh,
that's where
You know where
the
that
aunt and
is?
uncle lived.
yeah.
Oh,
I thought someone had said it was on the other side of Powell
I
Lane.
think they lived, that Dr. and Mrs. Knight, I think, lived on Days Avenue before the Smiths died. And then they went to the family home there,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
is that the first house after you cross the track, or is that the second house?
I think it's the first one.
Is that little white house?
No, it's the big
The
gray
bigger
house.
house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big,
Second-
big
it's the
gray
second-
house.
It's a big gray one.
Okay.
Second one,
On the left,
Left-hand
after
side.
you
So
cross.
we can.
railroad tracks.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, we all have our stories. Good ones, bad ones, and we learn from the bad ones as well as the good ones. And in each class, when I mentioned the story and I said that my mother, Jack Knight, the hero, divorced, and my mother was a child in a divorced family, it was very interesting to me to see the children that, they kind of, they nodded their head, yeah, we know. Divorce is rampant in this country. So we really need to talk to our children. And whether your children are, well, my son is 62. Grace, the flight attendant, is 60, believe it or not. My grandchildren, they listen to me because I listen to them. Both of those handsome young men are looking for wives. If you know anyone that is tall and intelligent, those are the only qualifications, tall and intelligent. See me, they're both engineers. What else can I tell you? We need to talk to our grandchildren, and especially values. Whether your value is hard work, do the right thing, share your recipe, whatever is important to you, because after we're gone, they're gonna wish that they remembered. Oh, I wish I had asked my dad, I wish I had, so talk to them, whether they are listening or not, talk to them.
I have another question.
Yeah,
You were probably pretty young when he died. Do you remember him?
I never met him.
Oh, you
I
didn't?
was only 7, I think.
Okay. So you didn't live in Buchanan then, ever?
Never, no.
Okay,
But he lived in Chicago on the
Okay.
south side near Midway,
okay.
and we lived on the north side. And my mother did live with him and his second wife when she was in high school. And he wanted her to go to school and be a kindergarten teacher, and she did not want to go to school and be a kindergarten teacher. She wanted to marry my dad and live happily ever after. So she did. And they were very poor during the Depression, my parents. And you know what? It's not so bad. Not so bad at all. I married a man with, right out of the Army, who was an apprentice at $1.69 an hour, and we had nothing. Well, so what? He drove a junk and worked hard, and the meaning, ask yourself, I see some people smiling, they are relating that you gotta know what the meaning of life is. I don't know what Jack would say. Do the right thing, fly, I don't know. But something to think about. What is important, and tell your grandchildren what you think is important. Ask them the tough questions. I've been doing a lot of flying back and forth between Houston, my daughter, and Houston wants me to move to Texas and be a cowgirl. You meet the most interesting people on the airplanes. Oh my, I sat next to a bull rider. I mean a real bull rider. And I was tired. He wanted to talk, so I listened. You wanna know anything about bull riding? I know all about it. And he also worked on the oil rigs. Now that I was interested in. So he told me about being on the oil rigs. Well, finally, I said to this guy after listening, could you tell me what the meaning of life is? And he said, I know what the meaning of life is. To ride motorcycles, drink beer, and chase women. And then he laughed, and he said it again. To ride motorcycles, drink beer, and chase women. And I said, how's that working for you? He said, not so well. Do you think I should go back to church? I didn't have to say a word. I just listened and asked questions. I remember him. I pray for him. I hope he went back to church. I hope he stopped chasing women. People are so interesting. I keep talking because you're such a good audience. I was in an airport waiting for a plane, flying standby, And I went in for a yogurt. Don't eat airport food usually, but I wanted a yogurt. It was a large area with lots of tables, and there was only one person at one table, so I bought my yogurt and I sat down next to her. And she looked startled that somebody would sit down next to her. What would you say? I said, "Where are you going?" She said, "Siberia." I thought she was kidding. She wasn't. So why are you going to Siberia? Well, my mother lives there. So I heard all about Siberia. What's my point? What is my point? People are so interesting if we, are you paying attention? Give her a red ticket. It's the language of middle school. People are so interesting if you listen to what they say and ask questions. We're so eager to tell, talk. Just ask questions, and people, we've got some very interesting persons right here. Different, you're all Michiganders? You've got stories to tell. I hope your stories have a point. Who wants to tell a story? Well, think about it. Think about what story you can tell some young person. I've got a new friend. His name is Rocky. His name isn't really Rocky. His name is Irakali. Irakali Gurganidze. Yeah, funny. His dad is from the country of Georgia. Rocky's very intelligent and he likes to talk. And I sit back and listen to him. Of course I feed him lunch. That helps. Feed a teenage boy lunch and he will come. If your life is dull, I suggest you look around for some middle school kid or some high school kids are a little too more difficult perhaps. And just ask some questions and listen. And if you've got grandchildren in town, fine, you're set. If you don't have any grandchildren around, find one. Find one at church or find a young person. It's fun. Rocky came over to see me now. He's now 17. Did your mother send you over here? He looked hurt. No, I wanted to see you. It's fun to have a teenage friend. Okay, you've got your assignment.
I have one question, Pat. Were the middle school students receptive? Did they ask questions or mostly just try to?
I liked them. I liked them a lot. It was the 7th grade. I had 5 7th graders, 7th grade classes, and it was generally this, sort of.
Yeah.
And I tried to ask them, I also, in case I ran out of time, I told them, don't go into aviation, it's passé. You don't wanna be an airline pilot anymore. Flight attendant, forget it. They don't serve food. But I had a bunch of, when did Neil Armstrong land on the moon? Somebody knew, 1969. How many galaxies are in the universe? 125 billion. Who counted them? How do they know that? Scientist says there is a mysterious force that's causing the cosmic expansion to speed up. Think about that. We're expanding and it's speeding up. How do they measure that? How fast are we moving? The largest star found is, somebody knew that, the UI Scuti. It's about 2,000 times bigger than the sun. How many galaxies in the universe? They say about 100 billion. Really? Who counted them? Who has seen the ISS? What is the ISS? Anybody know what the ISS is?
International Space
International
Station.
Space
Yeah,
Station.
have you seen it? If you go on NASA's
Saw it last
website,
night.
the ISS, they will, and your zip code, they'll tell you when it's gonna come over, which direction and what
It
time.
was just visible the other day.
You saw it?
Saw it last night.
Yeah, was that last night? Yeah.
Did you wait? And when you think that there's 12 people up there, and what are they doing, and why? And they've been up there,
Now I have the story.
yeah,
When I was younger, I had an amateur radio license. And one of the excitements of that is you can get on the air and connect with people around the world. And I learned that any radio station above a certain altitude, I couldn't remember what, is considered an amateur radio station.
yes,
So, any satellite orbiting the planet, the space stations, the space shuttle, when they're in space, they're considered an amateur radio station. So, there's one form of amateur radio communication, it was called packet radio. It's where you have a computer and you're able to hook it up to your radio. And you can type in a message and it sends that signal over the air and it could be received that way. Well, I was able to connect with the space station Mir when it was still orbiting.
wow,
And I connected, it was very brief, because they're moving,
yeah,
really fast. You got like seconds
yeah.
to connect, and I was able to connect and at least say hello to a cosmonaut.
Yeah, so that was the Russian,
Yeah,
the Mir,
space
yeah.
station Mir, yeah.
Does anybody know how many satellites are up there right now?
Several.
Several.
Several thousand.
Do you remember, I think it's either 6,000 or 9,000. A quarter of them are no longer functioning, and they're kind of worried about it when they start falling down where, I see a lot of nodding heads, you read the newspapers, good. So the Hubble telescope's been operating for 31 years, and it has been replaced by the James Webb telescope, that was named after, this is a trick question. James Webb, yeah. It belongs to you. You paid for it. You paid for it. It was 10.
We're paying for the satellites that are gonna fall down, too.
Yeah. The James Webb telescope cost $10 billion. And it's 66 foot by 46 foot. And it's going to be much higher than the Hubble. It's going to be way up there, and they assume, they hope, they guarantee that it's going to see the edge of space where there is no more. Really? Where does space end? What is on the other side of nothing? Is there such a thing as nothing up there? No, it might be very sparse, but again, how do they know? And what is the speed of sound? What is the speed of light? I was trying to engage the 7th grade in astronomy, or I said, that's where the future is. It's up there. We're going to have a space station up there. They're going to have a permanent station up there. We have a space, what do we call them? The, can't think.
Colony.
The branch of the military that's space.
Space Force.
Yes. And they don't call them soldiers. They don't call them sailors.
Guardians.
Oh,
Guardians. consider being a guardian. They're not taking just anybody. And then somebody told me where their base is. I mean, if you're gonna pick a base for the Space Patrol, Michigan.
How about Buchanan?
Yeah. Okay.
I watched the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, and she goes into that because it's a space.
Did it scare you?
No, that was quite, interesting, and I never forgot.
Contact.
Contact with Jodie Foster. It's
Okay.
really good, because her father dies, and she's got all these things set up, and you didn't have to see it, but it
I gotta
goes
look it up.
beyond, and their time is different than ours.
Yeah. So you don't know if it was science fiction or?
Oh, yeah.
But it was,
But it
who
could
knows,
be.
could be.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Shall I dismiss the class? Okay, unless you know an aviation joke or an aviation fact, or you wanna tell me about your grandchildren?
How old's your grandsons?
That's in your life.
They're in their middle to late 20s. Yeah.
Because I do that with one of my granddaughters.
You might work.
Is she tall and intelligent?
I don't know
See
about
afterwards with
tall.
a photo.
Wouldn't it be fun though, to be a matchmaker? I would love to be a
I
matchmaker.
try.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I got one. So did you have like more interest in like Kalamazoo, Michigan has an air zoo museum? Did you have more interest in going to like airplane shows, air shows, stuff like that while growing up or anything?
Did I have encouragement from my parents
Or
to go to air shows? No. I came from a modest background, and my parents gave me anything that I wanted. Consequently, I asked for nothing.
Okay.
I was not, didn't take advantage of their generosity. No, I paid for my own flight lessons. And my dad studied right along with me. That was a good father-daughter deal. And then I decided I wanted to be a pirate, and they bought me a sword and gave me fencing lessons, and after 1 month, I quit because I hated it. Unless you think I was a spoiled brat, I was not. I was quiet, and people liked me, because I was Jack Knight's granddaughter. You are dismissed.
Thank you for.
thank you.
How are you, Corbin? I think there's cookies if anybody cares.
Raising the cookies or we'll have
Opening
to.
up this next week.
He won't say, yeah.
I think
Oh,
that's it.
at the screen?
You know, the ones that you.
Oh,